we have seen the future of sci-fi. What it can look like when you push the limits and explore new dimensions. The ultimate in horror, drama, crime, suspense, and the unexplainable that twists your mind and makes you wanting more. Much more of this fascinating world of darkness, mystery, questions and answers, betrayal and space. All the amazing ingredients that make the X-Files the TV success of the century. Young actors David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson did not know what they started back in 1993. From a charming idea, they created a monster, something to adore and cherish, already as classic as Star Trek or I Love Lucy. Who doesn't remember the Midwestern cannibals, Tombs, the Peacock family, Mulder and his love-hungry vampires, Scully and the Fatal Tattoo, the Eve Project, great stuff. And we haven't even mentioned the Great Conspiracy, the apocalyptic scenario the creator Chris Carter have been painting since the very beginning, piece by piece. A clue here, an answer, and lots of lies and cover-ups. But I mean, who wants to know the truth? That we're about to be colonized by aliens, mainly as food, and that a group of very powerful men are planning to take over. We're talking about big-time panic. No wonder they do anything to keep Mulder and Scully from finding the truth. Well, I mean anything but killing Mulder. These men don't want his quest to turn into a crusade with his demise. It's better to keep your enemy close, watching and make sure he's going exactly where you want him to go. Of course, things don't work out that way. Mulder is discovering way too much about the clones, the Russians, the virus and the beast than he's supposed to. So Scully becomes the target, abducted, not once but twice. In the hands of the aliens, her only hope is Mulder's devotion and stubbornness. Can they beat the Cancer Man and his allies? Fox Mulder, the believer, and Dana Scully, the scientist and the skeptic. The one that keeps her head clear when spooky Mulder sees too many little green men. Scully may be a pretty strict and rational person, but with Gillian Anderson is quite the opposite. She's warm and a bit crazy, and the lady's got a sense of humor. Just listen to this.
Yeah, I am a long way from Scully in real life. More and more so all the time, I think. I think the closest that I got to Scully was when I was pregnant, just because I had so many restrictions about me, and she does. She has so many restrictions on a physical level, the suits and the hair and the straightness, and also within her work. And I'm much more free-form, much more spontaneous, much less skeptical, much more crazy. I'm insane. It was interesting. There's an episode which aired not long ago in the States, which was a large departure for Scully and not necessarily appropriate to who the character was, but it kind of dove into a darker side of the character. But it was interesting in playing it because there was a certain eroticism and sensuality to the situation that she found herself in. But in playing the arousal of the character, I had to play it as Scully would play it, as opposed to how Gillian would play it, or how a more sexual character would play it. And it was difficult to. It wasn't difficult. It was just not as rewarding, I think, to have to pull back. To have to. There's a particular scene. There's a tattoo scene that where Scully gets a tattoo, and she's in the process, she's in pain, but the date that she's on is standing in front of her and staring into her eyes as she's getting it done. And it's a very potentially sensual scene. But I had to play it as Scully would play it, which is not what I would call erotic in any way. So it was interesting.
You're a mother now. Has this role changed Gillian Anderson?
Definitely. In many, many ways. I mean, having a child forced me to grow up in many areas of my life, and having the responsibility of another human being is wonderful and eye-opening and stressful, and it really made me think about things and think about my priorities and think about my time and how my time is spent, and think about what is important to me and what it is that I have to offer and what it is that I want to put out there in the world, and how I want my time to be spent. And it's very important for me, more than it ever has in my life, that I'm heard. That when I say something, that somebody hears what it is that I'm saying, and that I'm serious about what I'm talking about, because I have so little time to myself that when when I'm actually in discussion about something, or I'm voicing opinions, I need to be heard.
You have said that you've been misquoted in the press. Don't they listen to what you say?
There's a difference between being listened to and being heard. So much of what I have said in interviews and in print has been misprinted or misrepresented in some way, and that's not the same thing as being heard. When I speak and when I tell the truth about something, and when I put forth an honest opinion or a heartfelt opinion about something, it's important to me that what I say is taken down as verbatim. That it's not. Very often what will happen in print interviews is I'll be asked a question and I'll go off on the question. I'll start speaking, and then in the final print, the question won't be printed. So it's as if I started talking about it on my own volition. And stuff that I would never say or bring up without having been asked. Little things like that, details like that, which are frustrating. And I feel like I've been misrepresented in many circumstances.
Mm. Being a famous person, can you walk out and get your groceries yourself?
Well, I can walk down the street and buy my bread and everything, and I do. But I do find myself closing up a bit, having some kind of shield around me, just as a protection, just knowing who's around me and who might be approaching me at a particular time, and your sensors get turned on, and I get into like a protective mode, especially if I'm around with my daughter.
You currently stay in Vancouver. I know you lived in England for a while. Can you please tell us a bit more about your background?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and both my parents were in school and working. And I guess the story goes that my father was deciding whether to go to the London Film School or whether he was going to go to a film school in California. And he asked my mom which she would prefer, and she said London. And so in order to save money, we moved to Puerto Rico, which is where my dad's family was living at the time, so that they could save money, so they wouldn't have to work or anything. And so we lived there for about 15 months, and they saved money, and then we moved to London. And my dad went to London Film School, and I guess initially we were just going to stay for the 2-year term that he was going to be there. But my parents fell in love with London, and so we ended up staying for 9 years, and eventually they bought a flat, which we still have. And we moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan. My dad got a job with an old film school buddy in Grand Rapids, and so we moved. And every other summer we'd go back to England, to Haringey, which is where the flat is, and visit. And so we lived in Grand Rapids, which is where my parents still are, which was rather benign for me, at least. And then I went off to Chicago to go to school to study theater. And at the end of that, I was a kind of a workshop. At the end of the 4-year term, we had to do monologues in front of agents and casting directors and stuff. And so we traveled to New York to do the monologues, and there were some agents in the audience, and one of them from an agency called William Morris handed me a card and said, come and meet with us. And so the next day I put on some flowery vintage dress that was about 10 times too big for me, with a belt around the middle, and I went in, and they said, I have no idea why, but they said, if you move to New York, we'll represent you, at least on probation, for a while. So I went back to Chicago and packed up all my stuff and loaded it on top of my Volkswagen Rabbit, and drove out to New York, starting out at about 11 o'clock at night, I was determined to go out on this particular day, and it took much longer to to actually get everything together than I had previously anticipated. So it was 11 o'clock at night, and I was determined to go out, so I left and just drove and slept in the car and ended up in New York without really knowing where I was going to stay, and ended up staying on the floor of some friends for a while, and finding an apartment and subletting, and ended up living there for a couple of years and doing some theater, and then moved to Los Angeles to be closer to somebody, a guy that I had become involved with in a play that I was doing, and ended up selling my return ticket and staying there, and auditioning a lot, and eventually ending up on unemployment, and being out of work for a good year. And then, the show came along. The X-Files kind of didn't necessarily fall into my lap, but it came to me, and I ran with it.
How come you moved that often?
When I was younger, the moving around was my parents moving around, and because of the fact that I was the age that I was, I had to tag along. It's ironic that I've chosen a business where moving around is part and parcel of the job. Maybe that was preparing me for it, in a sense. But I enjoy moving around a lot, and I'm always, I've been going from one place to the next, just feeling out what feels most like home. Vancouver's not home, it's a temporary home. I bought a house last year, and in an attempt to make Vancouver feel more like home, and it does. When I'm in the house, I feel like I'm at home. But strangely enough, even though I swore off Los Angeles many years ago, I swore that I'd never moved to Los Angeles from New York. LA does feel like home. I go back to New York a lot. I love New York City, and I feel very good there, but it's very different with a child than it was as a single non-parent. And Los Angeles feels like home, and I actually go down there quite a lot and get energized and come back up here and do the work. But Vancouver's a very small city, really, and I like big cities. I feel better in big cities. I feel like I belong better in big cities, and it's a beautiful city, but it's also very dark, which adds to the quality and the gloominess and the moodiness of the show. But I've realized, even though I didn't grow up around sunlight, like today, the sun came out, and I felt completely different than I felt all week without the sun. It just makes such a huge impact on me. And there's SAD, which is some kind of light disorder, and I'm sure that I fall into that category because it completely affects how I am in the world.
Okay. An ordinary day in the life of Gillian Anderson, what does it look like?
Normally, I get up in the morning and work out for an hour to an hour and a half, and try and spend a few minutes here and there with my daughter. And then we all jump in the car, come to work. I work on the script on the way to work, and go into hair and makeup, get dressed, go to set, work for about 15 hours, 16 hours, 12 to 16 hours. Get done, change, work on the script in the car on the way home, work on the script at home, and go to bed. If I'm off a little bit early, then I spend extra time with my daughter, and then it starts all over again the next morning.
The X-Files is a tremendous success. You must feel pretty satisfied about this.
I've been very, very fortunate over the past couple of years to have received that particular type of recognition for the work that I've been doing, and I'm grateful. It took a long time for people to really catch on to the show and separate it from the realm of science fiction, because it's not, and there's a lot of drama, and there's a lot of dramatic, there's a lot of emotional drama in the show, and there's a lot of work that's done within that realm, separate from just chasing aliens and bad guys and special effects. And I think it's, people are finally starting to see that there is some acting work being done on the show, separate from reacting to monsters and stuff. And so that's it's good to know that it's being respected in that way.
Mm. Are you a fan of science fiction yourself?
Well, there's never been a real interest of mine in the future. I mean, I'm fascinated by certain aspects of futuristic elements. Like, I mean, time travel is fascinating to me, and the whole concept of UFOs and stuff is fascinating to me. But it's never something that I've studied or been addicted to in any way. And I think that, initially with the BBC series Future Fantastic, one of the reasons why they approached me was because of my connection to the show and the futuristic elements within the show, and the fact that the series was about how the science fiction of the past influences the science of the future. In terms, and so therefore the music that was used had elements of futuristicness in it, and so consequently the video also dabbles in elements of the future and the present, and and it's also I think it's on people's minds more than ever right now as we're coming to the end of a millennium, and as we are potentially moving on and growing, and we're being reminded as a human race that that we're getting older and that we're moving forward. And, in terms of technology today, in terms of science and technology, we're just moving faster and faster and faster all the time at such a rapid and somewhat scary pace that I think that it makes people, question their future and our future, and will we be able to control these things that we're creating, and will we be able to stay human and real and alive in the midst of robots, in the midst of computers, in the midst of all these gigantic machines, which we fear on some level will eventually take us over. So I think that's It's on people's minds.
But the X-Files is pretty close to reality, isn't it?
It's actually been rather uncanny how particular episodes that we're working on at any given time mirror stuff that's going on in real life in terms of science and medicine and technology. It's been kind of uncanny. And I know also that, so some of the writers do pay attention to what's going on in the world at the present time and take some ideas from situations that are presented in the world and run with them much more than, what would be within the realms of reality, but still they work hand in hand.
And X-Files, the movie, what can you tell us about it?
It seems to be progressing in that way. It seems like there is going to be one. I know Chris is working incredibly hard to finish the script, and they're making plans to do it, so it looks like it's going to happen. Making
a movie is a bit different than TV. Are you nervous about doing this?
No. I mean, it's each episode that we shoot is a mini-movie anyway. I think it's a natural progression. And I think it could be vastly popular because of that. It doesn't scare me. It's because we've been doing the show for now 4 seasons, and we know the characters so well, and we know the life of and the world of the X-Files. It seems like the easiest choice to make. Doing a completely different feature, a completely different project would be much more scary than this is.
You're working with BBC and the TV series Future Fantastic. Are you open for other projects?
Very much so. Things have shifted a bit for me over the past little while in terms of the opportunity to do other projects. And so for some time now, I've been looking at other things. And if for some reason, the feature does not go, I will do something else. But it's definitely something that I've been planning and plotting and looking very closely at for some time now, and dying to take some steps in that direction.
A lot of actors are stuck in a certain field. Some are always cops, some are always bad guys. Do you feel you have been able to avoid that?
I've been very fortunate in that from the beginning, very few scripts that have come my way have been even remotely like Scully. For whatever reason, people have not seemed to have typecast me in that way, and that's been wonderful. I'm doing a couple projects, little projects next month, and neither of the characters are remotely like Scully at all, and so that's both terrifying and wonderful at the same time to have that opportunity to do something completely different. One is a South Side Chicago girl. It's a film that called Hellcab that takes place. The entire thing takes place in a taxi cab, and different actors from a lot of them from Chicago are doing cameos in it, little characters here and there, and so she's just a very kind of rough South Side girl. And the other is I don't even know how to describe it without saying that she's an alcoholic. Kind of a weathered, been around the block, not middle-aged but older woman.
Yeah. You do the narration on Future Fantastic and are involved in the soundtrack. Is Gillian Anderson a music fan?
I approached this mostly because of the input of music that I was hearing while I was doing a series for the BBC called Future Fantastic. And it was basically my response to the music that I was hearing while I was narrating the series. And I had, just kind of mentioned to them that the music was wonderful and that they should put together a compilation album. uniting all of the artists in some way, and the producer said that they might be interested in doing that. And then I expressed some special interest about the title track that was used for the series. There was just something very very different about it, very unique, very sexy about it, and it reminded me actually of the song that plays in Basic Instinct when Sharon Stone is dancing with the woman in the bar. There was just something very just kind of primal about it. And it's not a very primal song, but it reminded me of that for some reason. And so I said, you guys, you should put out a dance mix of this song because it's great. And they said, well, would you be interested in putting down some vocals? And I said, well, no, because I don't sing and I'm never going to sing. But I might be interested in putting down some a voice track, some spoken word of some kind. And they said, well, let's see what we can do. And so they approached some music companies, and we got some interest from Virgin, who were all of a sudden interested in putting together not only a single of Hal's song Extremis with my voice on track, but also a 2 CD compilation album of music that was used in the series and additional music that Virgin represents. So that's really how it came about, and that's how I've approached it. It started out as a creative idea and a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun doing it. We had a lot of fun in the recording studio recording it. We had a lot of fun making the video, and this is just for a laugh in a sense, and it's not my song. It's not about me putting out a single. It's just me having fun and uniting with this great band and using my voice in some way.
How is it to do narration? You seem to enjoy it.
I love doing voiceovers, and I love using my voice, and I love words, and I love the feeling of being in a sound booth, and that particular quality of hearing your voice come back again. Not that I like to hear myself talk, because most of the time, if you get me in a room, I'm the last person that will be talking. But there's just something about being in a sound studio all on your own, and there's something very intimate about having the headphones on, or the cans as you call them, and just being in that quiet space. And when you're not talking, there's a particular level of quiet, a particular resonance to the air about you, and it's just something really neat about it.
You do really enjoy it, don't you?
If you hear snoring, that's my dog in the background. It's not anything else. While I was doing the words for the song, they were structured in a particular way that I needed to use to get the maximum use out of my breath as possible in order to be able to say the next little bit within the rhythm of the song. And so I kept on having to breathe in between each one, and breathe pretty heavily to get my voice back up, and the breaths ended up being recorded as well and sounding so good on the track that we ended up using them. It was actually a technical mechanism for myself to have enough breath, and it ended up sounding quite full and sexy in the end, because it was just like this breathy nature to it that we ended up using it.
I was a bit surprised when I heard your voice on this song.
Actually, that does appeal to me. I mean, putting out a single with my voice on it is just, as far as I see right now, is just a one-time thing, and just something that I had fun doing. I love music. It's always been a huge part of my life, and I had a huge amount of fun and found a lot of. I found that I was fed creatively in a huge way as I was putting together, my ideas for the compilation album, and I'd love to do it again. I'd also love to to choose music for soundtracks. I love soundtracks, and I think that they are so very, very important and necessary to the quality of the final quality of a film. And so in some way I could see myself being involved in that area of music again, but that would probably be the extent of it.
Are you aiming for a new career, perhaps?
Well, this isn't an attempt at another career. My working on this album and working with these guys on the single is about having fun, and it started out that way, and it's got to be that way, because this is not another career that I'm attempting to pursue. This isn't about me and me putting out a single, or me saying that I want to sing songs and be in the music business. This is just something that kind of fell into place in a wonderful and fun and creative way, and that's the way it stands.
When did you record?
We recorded, I'm not sure what month we recorded it. It was a few months ago, before Christmas. I guess maybe it was October, November or something, and we recorded it here in Vancouver at a studio called Mushroom, which is where Skinny Puppy has done a lot of their stuff, actually all of their stuff. And so Hal, the band, and the producer David McNabb and his partner Perul flew up, and we sat in the studio for about 9 hours and did some mixes of the song and fiddled around a bit and had some fun, and then chose the right words to put down on track and did it.
What does your voice sound like on the song?
As far as techno pop goes, this is one thing that appealed to me about this track, was that it already had a warmth to it. There was something there was just something very human about it in some way, and I think that whenever you add vocals to something, it kind of ties in a warmth, a human warmth, a human quality to it. And I tend to have on track, at least this track, my voice is low and kind of smooth, and so I guess that would warm it up a bit more than it might be without it.